You're watching Commander's Demand with your host, Sports PSP, exclusively on the GRYD Network.
Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Sports PSP. Hope everyone's enjoying a fantastic day. Welcome to another episode of Commander's Demand. It's a podcast in which your boy Sports PSP discuss things surrounding the Washington Commanders. Before I talk about the Washington Commanders, folks, I hope everyone is enjoying a fantastic, magnificent, wonderful, lovely day. It's beautiful outside. My recommendation is for y'all to go outside, go to a barbecue, go to a picnic, play basketball, which is what I'm gonna do after I finish this recording, and just, enjoy life. Just enjoy life, man, because life is so short. You don't know you don't know what day's going to be next for you. So, like I said, folks, just enjoy your life, live your life. That's all you can possibly do at the end of the day. And just be around friends and family and just keep living your life, keep doing whatever you do. I know I'm doing what I'm doing, which is podcasts and giving y'all the type of content that I do. So just enjoy life. Now let's talk about the Washington Commanders. I want to talk about the name Commanders. And I'm not even so sure, folks, if we're going to continue using the name Commanders. I'm reading a little bit here from this article from NBC Sports from Pro Football Talks, Mike Florio. It says here the new owner, Josh Harris, might have no choice. Via trademark attorney Josh Gerben on Twitter, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has denied the trademark application for the name Commanders. And here are the two reasons, folks. One, the existence of a trademark for, quote, Commanders Classic, which is an annual college football game between Army and Air Force. And number two, pending applications filed by a man in the D.C. area referring to Martin McCleley. Hope I'm pronouncing the last name right. It's when he filed trademarks for, quote, Washington Space Commanders and Washington Wolf Commanders. This was at a time when he was trying to squat out on the team's potential new name. Washington still, however, has a chance to fight the matter, and they can work out something in order to keep the name Commanders. McCleley has already said that he will surrender anything he owns to the team. And that's something that he has been on the record saying for several years. Even though Gerben believes that the team will eventually be able to use the name, but that's only if new ownership will want to. And folks, back in 2020, during the pandemic year, and there was a lot of racial issues at the time from, of course, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Washington. Back then, at the time, they were called the Washington Redskins. They had to change the name because we were moving in a new time, a new era. And FedEx, Nike, Amazon, all these other major companies were like, Washington, until you change the name of the team, we're no longer going to do any business with you. And Dan Snyder, I remember it was from an article, I think it was from USA Today. He was quoted saying, "We will never change the name." And you can put it in caps. And it's been 3 times that we've changed the name. We went from the Washington Redskins. I really hate using that name, folks, but again, just to give context, to the Washington football team. And now the Washington Commanders. It's going to be hard for me and the GRYD Network, folks, because as you all know, the name of the podcast is called Commanders Demand. It's a podcast, like I said, in which your boy, Sports PSP, talks about things regarding the Commanders. If the Commanders decide to change the name, how am I going to change the new name of the podcast? It's going to be tough for not only the team to come up if they think about keeping the name, but it's also going to be difficult for me to change the name of the podcast. What new name should I possibly think of going from Commanders Demand to what? But if Washington, however, decides to change the name of the team, what can they be called? The Washington Red Wolves, the Washington Red Tails, any other name that ownership could possibly think of in order for the team? I mean, I don't know. I mean, how comfortable would I feel as a Commanders fan to keep the name? Honestly, folks, when I first heard the name Washington Commanders from Washington football team, I'm like, man, they should keep Washington football team. They should keep the Washington football team. Because when you hear Commanders, and I've listened to a lot of dudes out on the street when I'm playing basketball, when I'm going to Starbucks, when I'm getting my hair braided, going to the barbershop, etc., they're like, Commanders? I mean, come on, that's like a lousy name. That sounds like a soccer team. Apologies to soccer. Now, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but at the same time, this is what a lot of people have said. But Washington Commanders. At first, I thought they should have kept the name Washington Football Team. Because what is it? What's so exciting about Washington? What's so unique about Washington? Of an organization, of a franchise? Because I've said it before, folks, ever since Daniel Snyder took ownership of the team back in 1999, we have been absolutely nothing more than a shit show, a comedy shit show. We're like the laughing stocks of the NFL. I mean, there's us, there's the Detroit Lions, there's the Cleveland Browns. Washington is in that convo. Because throughout Daniel Snyder's stewardship, we've been nothing more than a shit show. From numerous off-the-field situations, the sexual harassment, sexual misconduct stuff, to the product that Daniel Snyder has put on the football field, which has been hot garbage. Hot garbage. And Washington plummeted. All these things that have happened under Snyder's stewardship. So, like, I don't know, folks, like, Washington Commanders, like, fan base, you know me, I talk about the Commanders all the time. I talk about the Washington team. If there are suggestions or ideas you want to come up with for a new name of the Washington football team, and maybe for a new name for our podcast, because I don't know if we're going to keep the name of the podcast Commanders Demand. If we change our team, I'm going to have to change a different name of the podcast. And that's going to be difficult for me and the GRYD Network for us to come up with. But luckily for us, we're intelligent people. We'll probably come up with something. But how does the Washington Commanders go from here? This would be the third time in like 3 years we go from a different football team name. from the Washington Redskins to the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders. This would be the third time we would come up with a different team name. So if you have any ideas or any suggestions, if we decide to go back, if we decide to go to a different team name, think of it, because God knows that I damn sure know for a fact we're not going back to being called Washington Redskins. That's for sure. We're in a different time, we're in a different generation, we're in a different era. Those days are over. Those are dead and gone. And if you want to think about going to the Washington football team, okay, fine. Only thing I liked about the Washington football team were the uniforms. I got to be honest, the Washington Commanders uniforms are terrible. They're corny, to say the least. Other than the black on black, I'm not sold or convinced on the rest of the Washington Commanders football teams. But hey, to each his own. But folks, if you are Commanders fans, if you are Commanders fanatics such as myself, please leave your comments in the comment section below. What types of names or suggestions do you think about? Can y'all think about for the new name for the team? Should they be the Washington Red Wolves, Washington Red Tails, or whatever name that you can possibly think of for the Washington Commanders? So please leave your comments. I would really, truly appreciate it. And you never know. Anyway, folks, I gotta talk about some unfortunate news about the Washington Commanders. I gotta talk about Armani Rogers, the tight end that was hurt. He suffered a non-contact injury. It was his Achilles, and he is likely out for the rest of the season. And this is a really, really tough spot for us for Washington, because I'm reading a little bit here from this article from John Keim of ESPN. He covers the Washington Commanders. Rogers suffered the injury while running during an OTA practice on Tuesday. It was non-contact. He only, in 11 games, 3 of them are starts. He only caught 5 passes for like 64 yards last season. But he missed time with various knee and ankle injuries, and he had transitioned from a college quarterback with Nevada and then Ohio University to an undrafted free agent tight end. He was known for as a blocker and a pass catcher. His progress, it pleased Washington, and they also liked his athleticism. So, fortunately for us, we still have Logan Thomas, John Bates, as well as other young tight ends last year who we drafted in the 5th round, Cole Turner, as well as an undrafted free agent in Curtis Hodges. It's a blow for Armani Rogers because first year in a new offense led by Eric Bieniemy, the new offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. And unfortunately, we won't see him in an opportunity being schemed by Eric Bieniemy. So that sucks. And it hurts me, folks. It hurts me because, next man up, we got to rely on other people to step up and handle his business. And Armani Rogers, young tight end, and unfortunately, he had an opportunity to come in this season with the new offense and contribute. And unfortunately, we won't see that this year. So I wish him a speedy recovery, and I wish him nothing but the best. I'm also upset because it piggybacks to what I've been saying all along about the tight end. I said before, folks, we needed a tight end in the draft. And I said that we needed to draft Darnell Washington out of Georgia. Darnell Washington, I understand he had an injury, and that's why he fell in the draft, but we could have drafted him. He could have made an impact for the team. He's about 6'6", 6'7", 260. He could be a legit red zone threat for the team, and we passed on him. I like Logan Thomas, and Logan Thomas was in the same situation like with Armani Rogers because he used to play quarterback at college football at Virginia Tech and transitioned to the NFL as a tight end. And a couple of years ago, he suffered an injury as well. We need a tight end, and we failed to get a tight end in the draft. So it's bullshit that we could not get a tight end in the draft. What are we going to rely on if we're Washington? Can you imagine if we have a legit tight end with this offense led by Eric Bieniemy? And how are we going to help out the young quarterback in Sam Howell? Now we have Terry McLaurin, we have Jahan Dotson, we have Antonio Gibson, our running back. We needed a tight end to make our offense more spectacular. And it goes back to what Ryan on the GRYD Network, who does his podcast. Check him out, folks. He does a great job with his podcast. He has talked about what Washington needs to do, which is make spectacular moves. And yet again, Washington did not do anything in the draft as far as with tight ends. You didn't. It also tells me that sooner or later, Ron Rivera is going to be out the door, and he's going to receive his pink slip. I hate to say this, but it's just the truth. This was an opportunity for Washington to have, and we failed. We failed to get a tight end. We failed to get Darnell Washington, who's now in Pittsburgh. They stole him. So what are we left with if we're Washington? Okay. Who the fuck are we? Really? I mean, Washington, you better hope you get a tight end next year because there are going to be some good ones, especially with Georgia's Brock Bowers, 6'4", 230, that could run like a wide receiver, great speed. In order for us to take our offense to that next step, we got to get somebody who could be an excellent tight end. Now, I'm not saying that any of these tight ends are going to be the next Travis Kelce or Rob Gronkowski or Kellen Winslow Sr. But the tight ends we currently have, realistically, they're just guys. They're not guys. They're not people that can make an immediate impact. Logan Thomas is coming off a torn ACL a couple of years ago, and he's in his 30s. Do I expect him to be the solution in the long term? No, I do not. I really don't. So this is really unfortunate for us, for Commanders fans, folks. It just really is. And personally, for me, it's bullshit. It's just bullshit because I just feel like we just can't get anything right. Again, I feel sorry for Armani Rogers. You know, the injury, non-contact. Again, I wish him a speedy recovery. I wish him the best. Washington, they could have had an opportunity to draft a tight end. They could have drafted Darnell Washington, but they didn't. He's now in Pittsburgh. So if you're Washington, you're going to have to find somebody. You're going to have to find somebody in free agency or whoever. That's what you're going to have to do. That's what you have to do. And unfortunately, it sucks that we're in this position, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Now I'm reading an article here from Commander's Wire from Brian Manning. I want to read this right here. The Commanders have invited tight end Brandon Dillon for a tryout. Brandon Dillon, formerly of the XFL's Vegas Vipers, he is now invited to Ashburn for a tryout. Dillon, who is a 6'5", 250-pounder who played collegiately at Marian University in Indianapolis. He was signed by the Minnesota Vikings as an undrafted free agent in 2019, where he spent 3 seasons. After being waived in December 2021, the Jets signed Dillon to the practice squad, but he never played for them. In 2022, Dillon signed with the New Orleans Saints in June, but was waived in August. From there, he spent the spring in the XFL. During his short NFL career, Dillon has appeared in 5 games with 1 reception for 6 yards. So, by adding him onto the team, we need depth. But at the same time, I don't expect him to be a difference maker or anything like that. I don't expect him to change our lives as Washington. But we need depth if we're Washington, nevertheless. What could have been? What could have been if we drafted Darnell Washington? But I'm gonna try to maintain my composure. If you hear any noise in the background, folks, that's just the sound noise because when I try to do podcasts and stuff, I hear noise in the background, so I got to get something to distract the noise. So I apologize for that. But man, imagine if Washington had Darnell Washington. I mean, shit, can you imagine how good we would be to pair him up with those types of weapons and to give Sam Howell something to look forward to, even though Sam Howell may not be the long-term solution at quarterback for us, and I'll discuss that during the end of the episode. But damn, imagine what we could have had if Darnell Washington was on the team. And speaking of next man up, I got to talk about Chase Young. Chase Young of the Washington Commanders, who we selected with the number 2 overall pick back in 2020. Now, Washington, they declined to pick up his 5th-year option, and he's been skipping OTAs. And look, he has a pattern of skipping OTAs. So, I got a problem with Chase Young. I got a problem with him skipping OTAs, and he's been doing this before. He even skipped the 2021 OTAs because he was, quote, busy making money. It tells me that Chase Young, I got concerns. I think Chase Young should be at OTAs. Washington declined to pick up your 5th-year option. This is an opportunity for you, if you're Chase Young, to cultivate a relationship with the new ownership, work on with the players, work on with your teammates, the rest of the other coaches. Because, Chase, if you look at your production since your rookie year, you played 15 games in your rookie year, you had 7.5 sacks, you made the Pro Bowl your rookie year, you won Defensive Rookie of the Year, but since that time, look at your production the past 2 seasons in Washington. In 2021, in which you skipped the OTAs, you only played 9 games and only 1.5 sack. And then in 2022, you played 3 games. And you've also been hurt. Let's keep that in context. Your second year, you were hurt, okay? You were out for the rest of the season in 2021. You suffered an injury during that year. You suffered a torn ACL. So because you've skipped OTAs in the past, still doing it as well, and because you've been injury prone. That's part of the reason why Washington has not picked up your 5th-year option. I think if Chase Young wants to get a contract in Washington, and I hope that it works out, Chase Young has to grow up. Chase Young has to be available for OTAs. Chase Young has to produce. Chase Young has to be available for the Washington Commanders. Chase, if you want to get the bag, if you want to get the type of contract that you feel like you want, you got to show up to OTAs. Perhaps spend time with the new ownership. Perhaps spend time with the coaches. Perhaps spend time working and improving your craft, being the best player that you could possibly be for the Commanders. And then if you ball out next season to the point where you're in the discussion for Pro Bowl, first team All Pro, Defensive Player of the Year, then maybe we can talk about you getting a contract. And I've also thought about this, folks. If it doesn't work out for Chase Young in DC, because I would hate for that to happen, do we consider trading him? Do we actually consider trading a guy who a couple of years ago, who we drafted with the number 2 pick in the draft, and if it were not in a quarterback era, he'd probably be the number 1 overall pick? Do we consider trading Chase Young? Now, at this point, he's not worthy of a first-round pick. At best case, 3rd, 4th round pick. If Chase Young, if he doesn't want to be here anymore, and if we, Washington, decide to trade him, what do we get in return? Honestly. But next man up. And not only that, Montez Sweat is also skipping out OTAs. That's a concern too. That's a concern too, because Chase Young and Montez Sweat, those are our 2 exciting young players on our team, particularly defense. Now, I understand Montez Sweat, he wants his contract, but I just feel like they have to show up, because, and as Washington, we need to keep them, because we need somebody to help out on the outside, because we got Darren Payne, Jonathan Allen on the inside. We need our difference makers in Young and Sweat to help out the team. Hopefully we work out as far as their contracts or whatever. I hope Chase Young can have a bounce back season, because the past 2 seasons he hasn't been available, and he hasn't had a season of double-digit sacks. If Chase Young can ball out and become the player he was coming out of Ohio State, oh, that could change everything. And with Montez Sweat there as well to help him out, that'd be great. Because if you look at Montez Sweat, he is a difference maker for our team. I love what he can bring on the team. He can get after the quarterback, and he's athletic as well. You know, he's had his rookie year in 2019, 7 sacks, 2020, 9 sacks, 2021, 5 sacks. And then in 2022, 8 sacks. So 29 sacks in 4 years in his career. So he has the potential of being a really good he's a really good defensive end, has the potential of making a Pro Bowl. And I don't want to lose him. So if we lose those 2, we're going to have to rely who's ever available on our Commanders. Or do we have to get somebody in free agency or whoever, because we need to add some depth to the team if we are Washington? It's really not the type of thing that you want to talk about, folks, but again, we got to talk about it. We just really got to talk about it, man, because I would hate to see those 2 go. And I've said it before, folks, Washington, we had an opportunity to get a tight end, and we failed to do that. Which is why I believe at the end of the day, and this will conclude the episode, Ron Rivera just got to go. Ron Rivera just got to go. I'm sorry. He's a very good leader, but I don't see us I don't see a future with him. I really don't. And if with Josh Harris, with the new ownership there, you're gonna have to make some huge changes. You're gonna, like I said, trust the process. Tank the rest of the season to get Caleb Williams, the number one overall pick. And if we don't get Caleb Williams, and if we end up getting Drake May as a consolation prize, hey, I'll live with that. Because not a lot of people are sold or high on Sam Howell. They're just not. Maybe Sam Howell could be a good quarterback. At best case, Kirk Cousins. He'll win you some games, pad stats, stuff like that, but not in the long term take you to a Super Bowl. Not in the long term will get you that far. That's what I don't see in Sam Howell. I see a quality starter in the NFL, but that's about it. But not someone who's going to shock or change the franchise. And that's something that Washington desperately needs because we've been a shitty ass organization for far too long, and we definitely need somebody. We definitely need components to help reinvigorate the franchise. We just need change, huge changes. We need next man up, folks. Man, I mean, this is tough. This is really tough for me as a Commanders fan to talk about, but hey, next man up. That's the only way I see our franchise, and that's where we're going. But anyway, folks, that concludes the rest of the episode. It's your boy Sports PSP. Like I said before, folks, Washington Commanders with the trademark, it's been denied. If you can possibly think of any ideas or names for the team and for the podcast name, if y'all want to come up with ideas or suggestions, please leave your comments in the comment section below. As you all know, folks, Armani Rogers is out for the rest of the season. Towards Achilles, non-contact injury. A shame. I wish him nothing but the best. But again, it always goes back to Washington missing out on Darnell Washington. And then, of course, the last topic, Chase Young skipping OTAs. I think this is a bad move on his part. You know, I think the best way for him is to go to OTAs, participate, work out with his teammates. And then if he could stay healthy for this upcoming season and have a great season, then maybe he can be in the discussion for a contract. But anyway, folks, that concludes the rest of the episode. Commanders Demand. It's your boy Sports PSP. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. I will try to do whatever I can is coming up with much more content as possible. So please, folks, enjoy the rest of your day and God bless.